Picture a bedroom. Now take away the bed frame. Take away the mattress, the sheets, the pillows. Take away the window glass, the floorboards, the door that actually closes. Take away the heat. Now add a floor of packed earth, covered in old straw, a sack stuffed with last year's bracken. 3 other human bodies, 2 of them children, and a wall you share with a cow. Add the smell of that cow. Add smoke. Because the fire in the middle of the room has no chimney, only a hole in the thatch that lets out maybe half of what the fire produces. Add the sound of rats moving somewhere above your head, and the certainty, absolute and unquestioned, that you will sleep tonight in every single piece of clothing you wore today, because if you don't, you might not wake up. That's a peasant house in medieval Europe. 14th century, give or take. A place where a bath was an event you could count on the fingers of one hand across an entire year, and where getting undressed at night was not modesty, not laziness, not ignorance. It was a survival decision, and the people making it were not stupid. They were running the numbers on staying alive, and the numbers said, "Keep your clothes on. We're going back there tonight." Not as tourists standing in a reconstructed cottage at a museum, sniffing politely at the herb garden. We're living it. One winter night, one spring, one body. Everything that body would have felt, smelled, carried, and survived. So I make these history stories, and honestly I still have no clue if anyone actually sleeps to them, or if you're all just lying there in your climate-controlled rooms, under your wash sheets, quietly grateful that you are not sharing a mattress with the 12-year-old brother who kicks. Either way, subscribe if you want. Get comfortable. Pull that clean blanket up. You're about to appreciate it more than you ever have. Here we go. The cold wakes you before the problem does. It's the middle of the night, some black hour with no name, and the fire has burned down to a dull red eye in the centre of the floor, and the cold has found the gap. There is always a gap. You sleep in your shirt, your tunic over the shirt, your hose still laced to your braise, your hood pulled down around your neck like a collar, and still the cold finds the place where the blanket has slipped away from your left shoulder, and it lies down against your skin through 2 layers of wool like a wet hand. For half a second you don't know where you are. Then you know exactly where you are. Because the knowing arrives as smell. Smoke first. Always smoke first, low and bitter. The ghost of a peat and wood fire that's been burning in this room in some form every day of your entire life. Then the animal smell, warm and enormous, coming through the wattle hurdle at the low end of the house where the cow stands and the 2 sheep are folded for the winter. Dung, wet hide, chewed hay, the sweet grassy breath of a ruminating animal. Then wet wool, which is the smell of everyone in the bed, including you, because wool never fully dries in winter. It just moves between damp and slightly less damp. Then straw going soft and old underneath the bed sack, and underneath all of it, holding all of it together like the bass note of a perfume nobody asked for, the smell of human bodies that have not been fully washed since the leaves fell. Your mother, your brother, your little sister, you. Welcome to a village in the English Midlands in the winter of 1358. Here is the problem, and it is the same problem it is every night. The fire is dying, and someone has to feed it, and whoever feeds it has to leave the bed. Understand what the bed is. The bed is not furniture. The bed is a heat engine. 4 bodies under 2 blankets and a cloak spread on top. Everyone dressed, everyone pressed together. Your sister's cold feet jammed against your calf. Your brother's elbow somewhere in your ribs. your mother on the outside edge, because the outside edge is the worst place, and mothers take it without ever being asked. Together, the four of you generate enough warmth to survive a January night in a house whose walls are woven sticks plastered with mud and dung, whose window is a shuttered hole, whose door lets a knife of wind in along the sill. Alone, none of you could do it. This is why nobody in your world sleeps alone if they can help it. Not married couples, not children, not servants, not travellers at inns who share beds with strangers as a matter of course. A bed to yourself is not a luxury. In winter, in a house like this, it's a slow way to freeze. And this is also the first reason, there will be more, but this is the first, why you sleep fully dressed. Wool holds heat even when it's damp. Every layer you take off is heat you spend, and heat in your world is not free. Heat is firewood, and firewood is labour, and labour is time you don't have. Nobody undresses to sleep for the same reason nobody throws bread on the floor. But the fire still has to be fed, because a house where the fire dies completely is a house that starts tomorrow in the dark with no way to cook, no ember to blow back to life, and a mother sending a child through the snow to a neighbour to beg a coal in a broken pot. That is a small humiliation, and your family has few enough things that it guards the ones it has. Your family keeps its fire. You know it's your turn. You know because your mother's breathing has changed. She's awake too. She's always half awake. She's been half awake for 15 years. And she hasn't moved, which means she's waiting. And the waiting is a kind of instruction. You slide out from under the blanket, and the cold takes you the way water takes you, all at once. Your body clenches around its own warmth. The rushes on the floor crackle under your feet. You sleep in your hose. Of course you sleep in your hose. Only a fool bares his feet in January. And you shuffle 3 steps to the hearth with your arms wrapped around yourself. And you crouch, and your knees pop, and you take 2 pieces of split ash from the small stack your father cut before Michaelmas, before the coughing sickness took him, and you lay them across the red eye of the fire with the care of a man setting the last stone on an arch. Then you wait. You have to wait. If the wood doesn't catch, you'll have to blow on the embers, and blowing on the embers means putting your face down into the ash smell and the smoke, eyes streaming, until a yellow tongue of flame climbs up the split grain of the wood. Tonight it catches on its own. Small mercy. You watch it for 3 breaths. 'Cause everyone in your world watches fire for 3 breaths before trusting it, and then you go back to the bed, and you lift the blanket as little as physically possible, and you fit yourself back into the slot your body left, which has already gone cold, and your sister makes a sound like a complaint without waking, and your brother's elbow finds your ribs again, and you lie there shivering while the bed slowly rebuilds you. Somewhere out in the dark, a fox screams in the field strips. The cow shifts its weight against the hurdle, a huge soft thud. The wind works at the thatch above you with a sound like fingers in dry hair. You should sleep. Dawn is coming, and dawn does not negotiate. But you lie awake a moment longer, and because you're the kind of person who thinks, which in your village is not entirely a compliment, you find yourself doing what you sometimes do in the black hours, which is noticing your own life as if from the outside. The weight of the tunic across your chest, the hood bunched under your cheek, greasy at the edge where it touches your neck, 'cause it always touches your neck. The itch along your ribs where the seam of your shirt lies against your skin, and the small, precise, moving itch just below your shoulder blade that is not the seam. You know what that is. Everyone knows what that is. You'll deal with it in daylight, the way you deal with it every few days. Shirt half off in the cold, fingers hunting along the seams, the small crack of a body louse between two thumbnails. You're 16 years old. Your name is what? Walter, if the priest is saying it. Walter Herring, son of Thomas Herring, villain of this manor, holder of half a yardland, which is to say 15 acres scattered in strips across 3 great fields, which is to say enough land to keep a family alive in a good year and not quite enough in a bad one. Your father held it before you, and died coughing in the spring, and now you hold it, at 16, with your mother and 2 children under you and the Lord Steward, watching to see whether the here in half-yard land will fail. That is the true weight on your chest, not the tunic, the land and the eyes on it. The fire ticks and settles. The warmth of the bed comes up around you like water rising. You sleep. The bell wakes you the second time. 1 bell, not dozens. This is not London with its forest of steeples. This is a village of maybe 40 households strung along a muddy street, and it has 1 church, St. Andrew's, squat and stone-towered at the top of the rise, and 1 bell, and the bell is ringing for prime, which means the sky outside the shutter has gone from black to the colour of dirty fleece, which means it is time. Getting up in your world does not involve getting dressed, because you never got undressed. This is worth sitting with for a moment. You people of the future with your special clothes just for sleeping, your soft separate costumes for unconsciousness. The idea that a person would own garments whose only purpose is to be worn in bed would strike everyone you know as a joke about kings. You own, in total, 2 shirts of coarse linen, 1 on your body, and 1, the good one, the less mended one, folded in the chest for Sundays. 1 tunic of grey-brown wool, woven by your mother, fulled at the mill, the colour of the sheep it came from because dye costs money. 1 pair of hose, 1 pair of brays, the loose linen drawers that every man wears, a hood, a leather belt, shoes of turned leather that let in water through the seams no matter what you grease them with. That is the complete wardrobe of a land-holding peasant, and it is not a poor wardrobe by the standards of the street you live on. Old Maud at the end of the row owns 1 gown and a hood, and nothing else at all, and when her gown is washed she sits wrapped in her blanket until it dries, and everyone knows it, and nobody laughs, because half the village has been there. So you rise dressed. You have slept in the shirt you will work in, sweated in it lightly all night, and the shirt has taken that sweat the way it takes everything into the weave, where it joins the sweat of last week. The shirt gets washed. Your mother boils the linens a few times through the year, when there is fuel and fair weather and a day that can be spared, but the wool over it almost never does. You brush the tunic, you beat it, you hang it in the sun on the good days and in the smoke on the others, because smoke kills some of what lives in cloth, and everyone knows that too, the way everyone knows which mushrooms kill you. Wool full wash shrinks and stiffens and takes days to dry, and days of drying are days of a man with no tunic, and a man with no tunic in January is a man in bed. So the wool stays on, and stays itself year after year, growing a personality. What you do wash, listen, because this matters, because centuries of jokes have buried it, is your hands and your face, every day, every single day, and usually more than once. There's a basin by the door, wide, shallow, dark elm wood gone almost black with age. Your mother has already broken the skin of ice on the water in the crock beside it and poured some out. You go to it and you cup the water up against your face, and the cold of it is a slap, an honest, wide-awake slap. And you scrub your eyes and your mouth and around your neck where the hood grease lives, and you rub your hands together in the water, working your thumbs into the creases of your palms where yesterday's dirt has made its home, and you dry your face on the length of rough linen hanging on the peg on the end of it that is still mostly clean. You do this because your mother would take a spoon to you if you didn't, and your mother does it because her mother would have, and so on back beyond memory. Hands before eating, hands after the privy, after the buyer, before touching bread, face in the morning. The village court has fined men for fouling the stream above the place where households draw water. The manor has rules about where dung heaps may sit. You live closer to dirt than any person in your listener's world, so close that dirt is a member of the household. But you're not indifferent to it. You fight it every day, with cold water and ashlie and rough cloth, in a war you know you cannot win and refuse to lose. What you don't do, what almost nobody you know does more than a handful of times a year, is put your whole body into water. And here's where I need you to understand what a bath actually costs in the winter of 1358, because the answer is not nothing, just get in the river, you filthy medieval person. Start with the water, there is no tap. The well is at the green, 150 paces from your door, and a full bucket weighs about 25 pounds, and a wooden tub big enough to sit in. If you owned one, which you don't, though the reeve's wife does, takes 15, 20 buckets. That is 15 trips to the well and back on a path of frozen mud, 300 pounds of water hauled by hand, a full hour of a body's labour before a single drop is warm. Now, the heat. Water for a bath must be heated over the fire in the one iron-shod cauldron your family owns, a few gallons at a time, poured, refilled, reheated, poured. To bring a tubful anywhere near warm burns through an evening's worth of firewood, and firewood is not lying around free. Your right to gather wood from the Lord's waste is limited, written into the custom of the manor. Dead wood, fallen branches, by hook or by crook, literally only what you can pull down with a hooked stick, no axe to a living tree, and the Lord's woodward walks the coppices looking for stumps that shouldn't be there, and the fine for a stolen tree can be more than a pig is worth. Every log has a price paid in shoulders and time. An evening's fuel spent heating bath water is an evening's fuel not spent cooking pottage or keeping 4 sleepers alive till morning. Now the risk, as your world understands it. You've been told by people you trust, by the priest who can read, and by your mother who cannot, but whose grandmother buried 3 children and raised 5, that soaking the body opens it, opens the pores, loosens the flesh, lets the bad air in, the miasma, the invisible rot that rides on stench and fog and is, as far as anyone in your century can determine, the thing that carries fever. You have no way to know this is wrong. It is the best theory available, held by physicians in Paris and Bologna, and it fits the evidence you can see. People who plunge hot and wet into a cold draught do sicken. People who stand around chilled in wet clothes do take fevers and die of them, your own father among them, coughing his lungs out through Lent. The conclusion your world draws is not insane, it is careful. Water is powerful, and powerful things are handled seldom and with respect. And now the cold, which needs no theory at all. It is January. The water in the crock froze overnight indoors, an arm's length from a banked fire. To strip naked in this house, to take off the layers that are the only wall between your blood and the winter, and to sit wet, and then to dry yourself on coarse linen in air that shows your breath, is not refreshing. It is an ordeal, and afterwards you would put back on the same unwashed clothes because they are the clothes, and within an hour the bath would be a memory, and the lice, who didn't drown because lice live in seams and not on skin, would resume their work. So the whole body bath waits. It waits for warmth, for a saint's day, for the time around Easter when the year cracks open. And it waits, if we're honest, for a reason. Before the great feasts, before Easter, and sometimes before Christmas, if the weather allows, the village washes. Truly washes. You have done it every year of your life, and you will do it this year, and we will get there later in this story, because it is one of the strangest and most human scenes your world has to offer. But that is months away. Right now the bell has stopped ringing. Your face is stinging clean. Your hands are red, and the cow is bawling on the other side of the hurdle because her udder is full, and she knows perfectly well what time it is. Right now there is work. The byre end of the house is 3 steps down from the living end, because your great-grandfather, or whoever raised these walls, built the floor with a slope so that what runs out of animals runs away from where people sleep. This is engineering. Nobody calls it that, but that's what it is. Drainage. Worked out in packed earth by men who could not write their names, refined over generations, and it is the reason your family shares a roof with livestock and is not poisoned by it. You share the roof with livestock for the same reason you share the bed with your brother. Heat. A cow throws off warmth like a small hearth that feeds itself. On the worst nights of the year, the animal end of the house is the warm end, and everyone knows the story of the winter of the great frost before you were born, when the Oldith family put their children to sleep against the oxen, and every one of them saw spring. You take the milking stool, 3 legs, worn to shine where 100 years of hands have gripped it, and you put your shoulder against the cow's flank into the heat of her, and your cheek nearly against her hide, and you milk. Your hands know this so well that your mind is free to leave, which is dangerous because your hands hurt. They always hurt in January. The skin across your knuckles is cracked in fine red lines that open a little more every time you make a fist, and there are chilblains on 2 fingers of your left hand, hot, itching, purplish swellings that come from being cold and wet and then warmed too fast. Over and over all winter, every winter. Your mother makes a salve of rendered mutton fat and something green she won't name, and it helps, and it also means your hands smell like a candle. The milk comes in thin hissing jets against the wooden pail, first ringing on bare wood, then muffling as the pail fills, and the sound is the sound of your entire childhood, and the cow's warmth soaks through your tunic into your shoulder, and this, genuinely, and you know it even at 16, is the best moment of a winter morning. It will not get better than the side of a cow at dawn. You're not sentimental about it. You're simply present, the way people are present with the few comforts they have. Then it ends, and you muck out. Fork. Wooden barrow with 1 squealing wheel, the dung and fouled straw out the low door to the heap by the garden fence. And note that the heap is an asset, not a shame. That heap is next year's bean crop. Muck is wealth. There are men in this village who have gone to law over muck. Your breath smokes. The barrow handles are so cold they burn. The sky has come up grey and low, sitting on the bare elms like a lid, and the rooks are already out over the west field, walking the furrows like little bailiffs inspecting the winter wheat. Inside, your mother has the pottage going. Understand pottage, because you will eat it today and tomorrow and functionally forever. A pot that lives over the fire, oats or barley boiled with peas and beans from the store, whatever the garden gives. Leeks now, in January, and kale gone sweet from the frost and dried herbs, thickened, salted if salt can be spared, sometimes graced with a strip of bacon fat from the flitch hanging in the smoke of the roof, more often not. It is not exciting. It is warm, and it is there, and in your world food that is warm, and there is a daily victory over the oldest enemy your kind has. You eat it from a wooden bowl with a horn spoon, standing, blowing on it, with a piece of yesterday's bread, dark, dense maslin bread, wheat and rye mixed, baked in the Lord's oven because the Lord's oven is the only oven, and using it costs a farthing or a portion of loaves. And yes, you must use it. It is in the custom of the manor, and yes, everyone grumbles, and yes, everyone pays. Your sister, who is 7, eats with her hood up and her knees drawn inside her gown so that she is essentially a small tent with the spoon coming out of it. Your brother, who is 12, eats like the food has wronged him. Your mother eats last and least, and you have started noticing that this year, since your father died, and you've started leaving more in the pot, and she has started noticing that, and neither of you has said a word about it, and that silent negotiation, conducted entirely in barley, is what love looks like in a house with one pot. While you eat, you itch. Everyone itches. It is so constant that it has vanished, the way the smell of the house vanished for you around age 4. You scratch the way you blink. But this morning the seam of your shirt at the left shoulder is holding a parliament, and after the bowl is empty you stand by the fire, pull your arm out of the sleeve and drag the shirt half over your head and go hunting. Here is the technique, refined by 10,000 years of humans and their oldest companions. You don't search skin, you search seams. Lice lay their eggs, nits, glued tight as rivets, along the inner folds of cloth, in the warm channels where seam meets body. You run the seam between thumbnail and finger, slowly, feeling for the grain of it, and when you find the small resistance you pinch, and there is a crack, tiny, precise, satisfying, in a way you will not admit to the priest. You find 4. You find a line of nits and drag your thumbnail down it like a farmer harrowing. Your mother, without being asked, checks the back of your collar where you can't see, with the brisk hands of someone grooming a horse, and finds 2 more, and this is not disgusting to either of you. This is Tuesday. Later, in the spring, the shirts will be boiled and the bedding straw burned and replaced, and the whole ecosystem set back to 0. For now, you manage. Everyone manages. The King of England, whose shirts are washed by servants and whose bed is warmed with coals, also has lice from time to time, and pays a boy to comb his hair with a fine ivory comb, and the only difference between his war and yours is the quality of the weapons. You put your arm back in the sleeve, you take your hood off the peg by the fire where it hung, all through breakfast soaking up smoke. Smoke on purpose, remember, and you pull it on, and the wool settles around your neck warm and stinking faintly of the hearth, which is, in your world, a good smell, a rich smell, the smell of a household that can afford a fire all night. Strips today, your mother says. It is not a question. The ditch along your furlong in the Westfield has slumped, and the water is standing on the young wheat, and standing water in January means rot, and rot in January means hunger in July. The dead have no say in it, and the living have no choice. And it's Saboon Day Thursday, she adds quieter, which you knew, which everyone knows. Thursday the steward calls the winter ploughing boon on the Lord's domain, the days of labour your family owes as rent for the 15 acres, owed since before anyone's grandfather, written in the court roll in Latin you cannot read. 3 days' work in winter, more at harvest, carrying services, and a hen at Christmas, already paid. On boon days you work the Lord's land while your own waits, and the Lord, this is the custom, and custom is iron, feeds the workers, bread, cheese, ale. Some men say the boon day ale is the best ale of the winter. Some men say that's the point. You take the spade with the iron shoe. Iron only on the cutting edge, wood everywhere else. Because iron is money, and the mattock, and a heel of bread knotted into a cloth, and you step out of the one warm room of your life into the grey. The cold outside is different from the cold inside. Inside cold is a leak. Outside cold is the sea. The street of the village is 100 yards of frozen ruts, and you have never in your life seen it clean. In summer it is dust and dung. In autumn and spring it is a brown soup that pulls the shoes off children. In deep winter, like now, it freezes into a landscape, a miniature mountain range of hardened mud with ice in the valleys, and you walk it the way everyone walks it, eyes down, reading the ground, because a turned ankle in January is not an inconvenience, it is a mouth that can't earn its bread. The houses stand along both sides in their crofts, long low loaves of thatch and mud-plastered wall, smoke leaking from every roof hole and lying flat in the cold air, so that the whole village wears a grey ceiling of its own making. Geese complain behind wattle fences. A pig, the Aldith's pig, you know every pig in this village by sight and reputation, noses the frozen midden by their gate. Old Maud is at her door in her blanket, and you give her good morning, and she tells you it will snow by Sunday, and she is usually right, because she reads weather the way the priest reads Latin, from long service. At the top of the street the church sits on its rise, stone among all the mud and straw, the only stone building an ordinary person here will ever enter, and past it, behind its own bank and hedge, the manor house, timber, but big, 2 floors, glass in one window, one actual glass window that the whole village has opinions about, where the Lord does not live, because the Lord holds 4 manors and lives mostly at another one, and what lives here instead is the Lord's presence in human form, Master Simon the steward who rides in on court days, and John the reeve, who is one of you, a villain like you, elected by the village to squeeze the village, first among the unfree, keeper of the tallies, and a man whose eyes you feel on the back of your neck since your father died. Measuring, always measuring, whether what herring, 16, is a tenant or a boy. That is the whole map of your world's power, visible from one spot in the street. God's house in stone, the Lord's house behind its hedge, and the mud where everyone else lives. You have never been further from this spot than the market town, 6 miles east, 4 times in your life. Rumour says the sea exists. You're prepared to believe it. The Westfield opens beyond the last croft, and here is something your listener's eye would find strange. No hedges within it, no fences, no walls, just one vast open sweep of ploughland running to the skyline, combed into thousands of long parallel ridges like the sea got tired and lay down and froze, and divided invisibly to a stranger. To you the divisions blaze like painted lines, into strips. Your family's strips lie scattered, 2 here, 3 in the middle furlong, 1 good one down by the brook and 1 mean stony one up on the crest, mixed in among the strips of every other family, so that good land and bad land are dealt around the village like cards, which is the fairness of it, and so that you can never work your land without walking past everyone else's, which is the surveillance of it. Nothing in this field is private. Every man's ploughing, every man's weeds, every man's slumped ditch is public knowledge, discussed with the seriousness your century of listeners reserves for wars. Your ditch has slumped. Everyone knows. Ralph Atbrook mentioned it at Mass on Sunday with the false sympathy of a man whose own ditches are perfect. So you spend the morning in the ditch. I want to take you into this hour, properly into it, because this hour is the true answer to the question in the title, more than any theory about pores, more than the price of firewood. Why did these people not bathe? Stand in the ditch and learn. The ditch is thigh deep, and the water in the bottom is skimmed with ice that breaks under your spade like sugar crust. And beneath the ice the water is exactly as cold as water can be and still move. You work from the field edge where you can, but the slump is a slump, and to cut the clogged clay out of the bottom you must stand in it, and so you stand in it, and the cold comes through the leather of your shoes in the first minute, through the wool of your hose in the third, and by the 10th minute your feet have stopped reporting and become two abstractions on the ends of your legs, blocks you must look at to command. The work itself is this: drive the iron-shod edge into the clay with your whole body behind it. Feel it grate on gravel, lever back, the spade shaft flexing, your lower back taking the load like a rope taking a bucket. Lift a spadeful of blue-grey clay that weighs like a sleeping cat and gets heavier every hour, and swing it up onto the bank without letting the wet weight of it peel off the blade too soon and slap back into the water, which it does anyway, once in 5, spattering your face with drops so cold they feel hot. Again, your breath in clouds, your shoulders burning first, then settling into the dull ache that will live with you till Sunday. Sweat starting under your layers even in this cold. This is the trap of winter labour, the double bind every working body in your world knows. Work hard enough to stay warm, and you sweat into wool, and then stop working, and the sweat turns on you, turns to a chill lining inside your clothes, and that chill, your world believes with some justice, is how a man catches his death. So you learn the discipline your father taught you, that his father taught him. Pace the work so you never quite sweat through. Open the neck of your tunic when you're hot. Close it the moment you pause. Keep the hood on. Keep the belt cinched. Manage your own climate all day long inside your clothes like a sailor trimming sail. Your clothes, you understand now, are not something you wear. They are something you live in. They are the house you take with you. A peasant's wool is his walls and his roof, his stove heat held in, his rain shed off. Wool sheds water for a surprisingly long time, and even soaked it keeps a body warm, which linen and your future cottons famously will not. And a house is not something you tear down every night and rebuild every morning. A house is something you keep standing. By mid-morning you've cut 30 feet of ditch. The water, that dead-standing sheet on the young wheat, has begun to move. A gurgle, thin, then steady, a little brown vein finding its way down your new channel toward the brook, and you stand there with your ruined feet and your smoking breath, and you watch water obey you. And there is a satisfaction in it that I honestly do not know how to translate for people whose fields are screens. You made the water move. The wheat under that water is bred in August. You just fed your family in July with your back in January. Ralph Atbrook goes by on the headland with his mattock over his shoulder and looks at your ditch longer than a vane looks at a thing he doesn't care about. Runs well, he says. 2 words. From Ralph, that is a proclamation, a feast day speech, an embrace. You nod as if you barely heard it, which is the correct way to receive it, and inside your chest a small, stupid sun comes out. You eat your bread standing on the bank, feet finally out of the water, stamping them back into existence. And the bread is dense and dark and slightly sour and tastes, because you're 16 and have been swinging a spade since prime, like the finest thing ever baked by human hands. Then the afternoon, which is more ditch. Then the walk home in the failing light, legs heavy as green timber, hands curled into the shape of the spade shaft and reluctant to leave it, and the smoke sealing over the village going gold for one moment as the sun finds a slot under the clouds, and every roof hole in the street glowing like a lamp, and your own house among them, and the smell of your own smoke sorting itself out from the others as you get close. You can do this. Everyone can do this. Tell their own hearth by nose, and the door, and the warmth hitting your face like a wave, and your sister shouting your name as if you'd been to Jerusalem. You will not take these clothes off tonight. You have not seriously considered it. The damp hems of your hose will dry against your own legs under the blanket, the way they dry every night. The heat of the bed doing the work of a sun you won't see properly for 2 more months. Tomorrow you will put on, so to speak, what you never took off, and the day will begin again from inside the same wool. That is not filth. Pay attention now, because this is the sentence at the centre of tonight's whole story. That is thermal economics, practiced by experts, and every one of those experts would trade their theories in a heartbeat for 1 hour of your listeners' hot running water, and would then, being no fools, go back and put their clothes on before bed anyway, because their house is still made of sticks, and the wind still knows where they sleep. Thursday comes, and Thursday is the Lord's. You are at the domain gate before full light with your father's ox goad in your hand, and you are not alone. The street has emptied itself into the Lord's fields, every household that owes winter work sending its bodies, men, and grown sons, and here and there a widow's hired man, 30-odd figures in grey and brown wool, standing in the cold with their breath rising, stamping, trading the low morning talk of people who have known each other since before they can remember. Someone's cough, someone's joke, old as the village, still working. John the Reeve moving along the line with his tally sticks, notching who came, because who came is money. Every family that fails a boon day owes a fine, and the fine goes on the roll, and the roll never forgets. The roll is older than everyone here. The roll will outlive everyone here. Somewhere in a chest in the manor house, your family exists as a line of Latin. Thomas Hearing holds half a Virgate, owes 3 winter works, 4 autumn works, carrying service to the market town, 1 hen at Christmas, and cannot marry off his daughter without the Lord's licence, and cannot grind his corn elsewhere than the Lord's mill, and cannot leave. And the clerk has crossed out Thomas and written Walterus Filius, Walter his son, and that crossing out is the entire legal record of the worst spring of your life. Master Simon the steward sits his horse by the gate. He is not cruel, which surprises people in your listeners' century who have been taught to expect moustache twirling. He is worse than cruel. He is thorough. He has a face like a ledger, and he knows the customs of 4 manors by heart, every service, every fine, every excuse ever tried, and when his eye comes down the line and stops on you specifically, the new tenant, the boy tenant, it does not threaten. It weighs. You have felt scales before. You stand up under them the way your mother told you, not proud, not small, present, answerable. Hearing, he says, Master Simon. Your father ploughed a straight furrow. He did, master. A pause, horse breath steaming, the whole line quietly listening while pretending to adjust mittens. "See you do," he says, and moves on, and that is the entire conversation, and you will turn it over in your head for a week, because everything in it was a test and you do not know your score. The work is ploughing the domain's great south field, and ploughing in your world is not a man alone. Ploughing is a machine made of 8 oxen, one heavy-wheeled plough with an iron coulter and share, more iron in that plough than in your whole house. One man at the plough handles and one at the head of the team, walking backward as often as forward, talking to the beasts. That last one is you today, because your father was known for it, and it turns out the knowing passed down. You have the voice for oxen, low and level, and the patience, and the sense of when a team is about to balk before it bulks. All day you walk the cold furrows at the head of 8 animals whose shoulders are taller than your head, in the smell of their sweat and their breath, huge grassy engine breath in clouds, hooves sucking and cracking in the half-frozen ground, the coulter behind you slicing the world open with a sound like tearing canvas slowed down, the furrow rolling off the mouldboard in a long unbroken wave of shining clay, and gulls appearing from absolutely nowhere, screaming to walk the fresh-turned earth behind you like a rich man's retinue. It is brutal, and it is beautiful, and both of those are true all day without cancelling out. At noon the Lord feeds you as custom commands. Trestle boards up in the yard of the manor farm, and on them wheat bread, wheat whitish, real wheat bread, which your family tastes maybe 10 times a year, and hard cheese in slabs, and ale in leather jacks, proper ale, fresh, and the boon workers of the village fall on it in a good-humoured roar. This is the deal, old as the field, your sweat, his bread. Men eat leaning on the boards with the dirt of his lordship's soil to the elbow, and nobody washes past the hands, but everybody washes the hands. There's a bucket and a rag at the board's end, and a boy refilling it, and a man who reached for common bread with foul hands would hear about it from the whole table, because your people eat from shared dishes and other men's fingers are everyone's business. Cleanliness in your world lives exactly where the community can see it. Hands, face, the conduct of the table. It is a public virtue before it is a private one. The skin under 3 layers of wool is between you, God, and Easter. Sitting across from you at the board is Father Adam, the parish priest, who takes his boon day meal with the workers, because he farms his glebe strips like anyone, and because you suspect he likes it here better than anywhere. He is 50, grey as a badger, with hands as cracked as yours. This shocks visitors from town, a priest with labourer's hands, but a country parson in your world ploughs and mucks like his flock, and buries them and marries them and knows the inside of every house on the street. He watches you eat for a moment, and then he says, mild as milk, "Your ditch runs, I hear." News of ditches has reached the clergy. Of course it has. There is no news here except each other. It runs, father. Your father cut a good ditch. He tears bread. Cut too many of them the winter he took sick. There's a lesson in that if you're minded to find it. You look at him. He looks at the bread. A man's strength is a granary what? Not a spring. It doesn't fill from below. What you spend is spent, and you're spending a man's day every day at 16, and I'll tell you what I told him, and you'll listen better than he did, because you've seen how his account came out. He says it without cruelty, the way he says the burial office, because it is true and someone must. Work like the ox, not like the fire. The ox is still pulling at evening. Nothing is warmer than fire, and nothing is emptier by morning. He gets up brushing crumbs for the birds because he is the kind of man who feeds birds in January, and he puts one ruined hand briefly on your shoulder, weightless as a leaf. Come to the tower with me after Candlemas, he adds, as if it's nothing. The mason's leaving. Someone should see what he's seen before the scaffold comes down. You don't know what that means yet. You will. The afternoon is more furrows, and the light dies at 4 as it does, and the team is loose steaming into the byre, and you walk home in the blue dusk with the other men, and the talk is slow and tired and warm. Whose sow farrowed, whose son is courting whose daughter, whether old Maud's snow will come Sunday. And it strikes you, in the way things strike a person walking at dusk in a crowd of everyone they have ever known, that you cannot fall here without being seen, and cannot rise here without being seen, and that both of those facts are the same fact, and that this fact is heavier than the spade and warmer than the bed, and that you will live inside it your whole life the way you live inside your wool. Never quite comfortable, never once alone, never. And this is the trade. This is the whole medieval trade in one line. Never once alone. Old Maud Snow comes Sunday in the middle of Mass, and the whole congregation hears it begin. That particular hush against the church roof, and 40 heads turning slightly, and Father Adam raising his voice half a tone over the sound of the sky quietly burying the fields, and after the service the village stands in the churchyard in the falling white, among its own dead. The graves of everyone's everyone, your father's mound still newer than the others, and nobody hurries home, even in the cold. Snow on Sunday after Mass, with the dead close by and the living all accounted for. Some things do not need me to explain them to you. The deep freeze comes in the last week of January, as it always does, arriving overnight like a creditor. You know it before you open your eyes, because the sounds have changed. Hard frost has a silence with edges to it. The thatch has stopped its whispering, frozen stiff, and the first cart of the morning goes down the street with a ring instead of a squelch, iron tire on ground gone to stone. Inside, the water crock hasn't just skinned over. It has frozen 2 fingers deep, and you break it with the handle of the ladle, and the shards ring in the crock like bits of a bell. For 9 days the world is iron. And in those 9 days you learn, relearn, the village relearns it every year, and every year it is still news to the body, what water actually is. The well at the green freezes at the lip, the windlass rope going stiff as a rod, ice building on the stones of the well mouth from splash after splash until the whole thing wears a glass collar and the women stand on scattered ash to work it. The brook shrinks under lids of ice, open only at the fast water by the ford, and the cattle must be driven there to drink twice a day, every household's beasts, because a cow drinks 10-15 gallons a day, and there is no carrying that. You stand at the ford at midday with your breath freezing in your hood, an axe in your mittened hands, chopping the drinking hole back open. It heals over between visits, like a wound in reverse. And the cow drops her huge head and drinks in long swallows. You can watch travel up her throat, and the sound of a herd drinking through a hole in the ice. That hollow gulping echo under the frozen sheet is a sound your listener's whole century has never heard once. And you understand, standing there, the last and simplest reason nobody bathes in winter, the one so obvious that no chronicler ever bothered writing it down. For 9 days, in the coldest stretch of the year, liquid water, just liquid, never mind warm, is itself a thing that must be manufactured. by axe and fire, gallon by gallon, and every gallon has a cue. The pot's gallon, the cow's 15, the hands and the face. Then, if there were any left, which there is not, everything else. A bath in the deep freeze is not forbidden by the church or by the physicians. It is forbidden by arithmetic. It is at the ford on the 6th iron day that Alice the Haywood's daughter brings their 2 cows down while you're holding the hole open, and stands beside you in the enormous cold while the animals drink and says nothing, and you say nothing, and the 2 of you watch 4 cows drink as if it were a tournament, and her breath and your breath climb out of your hoods and mix somewhere overhead, which is, you're fairly sure, the most that has ever happened between you. Then she says, "My father says your ditch in the Westfield runs better than his," and is gone up the bank behind her cows before you can assemble a word. You stand there in the great silence with your axe. A moorhen scoots across the ice. Somewhere in your chest, a small stupid sun, the second of the winter, comes out and stays out for the rest of the day. And that evening your mother watches you eat your pottage, grinning faintly at nothing, and does not ask, because mothers in your world receive most of their news the way the village receives it, by reading the fields. On the 10th day the wind swings south, and the thaw comes loud. The whole village drips and trickles and gurgles for 2 days, like a thing returning to life. The street goes back to honest mud. The well loses its glass collar, and old Maud stands at her door and pronounces the back of the winter broken, and is, as usual, right. Now let me take you through a whole night, properly, start to finish, because the night is where the title of this story lives, and your world's nights are stranger and more crowded than your listeners have been told. Night begins early. By late afternoon in January the light is going, and light after dark is expensive. A rush light, a dried rush peeled to its pith and dragged through hot fat, held in an iron pinch, burns maybe 20-30 minutes and costs labour to make. A real wax candle is church property and rich men's business. So the household's evening runs on firelight and economy. Supper is the pot again, then the hour your world calls the shutting in, the animals checked one last time, your brother sent squealing through the snow to the privy behind the house and back, the door barred with the oak bar your grandfather cut, the shutter pegged, and the fire. Listen to this word. Your listeners use its descendant every day without knowing the fire is covered. Curfew, from the French couvre-feu, cover fire. The embers raked together and capped with the ceramic dome or banked under ash so they will neither die nor escape. Because a peasant house is a pile of dry straw with people in it, and every soul in this village has heard of a village that burned. Covering the fire at night isn't just thrift. In towns it's law. Here it's older than law. It's the last thing done by the last person standing, and tonight the last person standing is you. Then the bed. In the order the bed is always boarded. Children to the middle where the heat pools and the wall can't chill them, and they can't fall out or wander. You and your mother to the edges. Cloaks over blankets. Hoods on or off according to each sleeper's private treaty with the cold. Your sister sleeps entirely inside her hood like a snail. You keep yours loose at the neck. Everyone dressed. Everyone always dressed, and by now, a week deep into this story, you know the reasons the way you know them from inside. Because the bed is a heat engine and clothes are its walls. Because the fire is covered and the house will drop toward freezing by the black hours. Because if the animals break loose, if the thatch catches, if a thief tries the shutter, if the baby 3 doors down goes still and they call for your mother who knows what to do, if the night produces any of the things nights produce, The difference between a person who sleeps dressed and a person who doesn't is 30 seconds, and there are doors in this life where 30 seconds is the whole toll. Hold that thought. This story is going to come back for it. And then, the strangest thing of all, the thing that sounds like an invention and is documented across your whole world from court records to prayer books. You sleep twice. Nobody here sleeps 8 straight hours and never has. You go down soon after dark, hard, into what everyone calls the first sleep, and somewhere past the middle of the night, no clock, no bell, just the body's own arithmetic, the household surfaces, not fully, softly. An hour, sometimes more, of quiet waking in the dark. Your mother praying in a whisper on the far side of the children, the old rhythmic words going round like a wheel, your brother asking the ceiling some enormous question, why the stars don't fall where the fish freeze, and getting the answer sleep gives, which is none. The cow shifting, you lying warm in the middle of your life, mending in your head the harness that needs mending, or thinking about Alice, the Hayward's daughter, in a way you will be vague about at confession. People in your world use this watch of the night for everything. Prayer, talk, the making of children, small quiet work by emberlight, or nothing at all, just floating. Physicians write about it as ordinary. It has names in every language, and when the second sleep takes you, it takes you gently, like a boat pushed back out. Outside, the village lies under its snow, 40 covered fires breathing thin smoke into a sky rinsed with stars, and the only creature working is the fox, and the only light for 6 miles is the sanctuary lamp in St. Andrew's, one red point burning before the altar all night every night, which Father Adam trims before he sleeps, and which, if you woke and climbed the rise and pressed your face to the cold door crack, would be visible as a seam of ember colour under the church door, the one fire in your world that is never covered. You don't climb the rise, you're 16 and warm, and the second sleep has you. But I'll tell you who's awake. The wind, working the thatch, and somewhere under the same roof slope in the perpetual twilight of the eaves, the rats, keeping their own economy, and in the seams of every garment in the bed, patient as monks, the lice, whom no night ever covered and no winter ever killed, waiting for Easter like everyone else, though for opposite reasons. Winter grinds on. I could give you each week, but the weeks would not thank me. They are the same week. Ditch and byre and boon work. Pottage. The hands cracking and salving and cracking. One memorable day when the well rope snaps and the whole street stands around the well mouth arguing engineering like the Roman Senate. A burial. Old Aldith the Elder, 90 if he was a day, gone in his sleep between the first sleep and the second, which the village agrees is the death you'd order if death took orders. A birth in the same week at the far end of the street, a girl, and your mother gone 2 nights to sit with the mother, because that is your mother's unofficial office, and the house colder and stranger without her, and you on the outside edge of the bed those nights, taking the mother's place against the dark and understanding, in your shoulder blades at 3 in the morning. One more thing about her that you will never say aloud. Candlemas comes, the 2nd of February, candles blessed in the church, every household's year of light begun with a little flame carried home cupped against the wind. And Candlemas, old Maud says, is winter's hinge. If it's bright, more winter. If it's foul, spring is near. It is foul. The village is pleased. And a few days after Candlemas, Father Adam keeps his strange promise and takes you up the tower. You have lived your whole life within sight of St. Andrew's Tower, and you have never once been inside it above the ground floor, because the tower is not for people. The tower is for God and bells, in that order. It is the only stone your village owns. Grey limestone, carted 12 miles from the quarry by teams of oxen in your great-great-grandfather's time. The nave is old beyond reckoning Norman work, round-arched and thick as a cliff, and men in this village will tell you their however many grandfathers hauled its stone, and some of them are even telling the truth. But the tower is new. The tower is being finished right now, this decade, in the perpendicular fashion paid for. And this is the part that makes the village walk taller. Not by the Lord, but by the parish itself. By bequests and burial fees and the wool of parish sheep. 40 years of pennies stacked 80 feet into the sky. The mason, a travelling man named Gilbert, who has worked, he says, on an abbey you've never heard of and a cathedral you have, has been here on and off for 3 seasons with his 2 men, and now the last merlon of the parapet is set, and the scaffold, that spider-work of lashed poles the village children have been forbidden from and found on, in strict rotation all year, comes down this week. Father Adam leads you in through the ground floor, past the font, to a small door in the tower's thickness that you have genuinely never seen open, and inside it is a stair. A spiral stair, stone treads winding up into dark, each tread worn how. Nobody's climbed this daily for generations. No. Each tread hollowed slightly by the masons themselves. 3 seasons of boots, and cold comes down the shaft like water down a well, and you climb with one hand on the newel and one either wall, wool brushing stone on both sides, your breath loud, light arriving in slices from loop windows the width of your hand, and the stair does the thing spiral stairs do, which is delete the world and replace it with turning, until you cannot say how high you are. And then there is a door of grey daylight, and Father Adam pushes it, and you step out onto the leads of the tower roof, into the wind, and your whole life is lying on the ground below you. You grip the parapet. Everyone grips the parapet the first time. The stone is freezing under your cracked hands, and you grip it anyway. There is the street. One brown thread. There are the houses, your house, absurd, a loaf of bread with smoke coming out of it, and your own midden heap visible from God's chair, which is a thought you set aside to be embarrassed by later. There are the 3 great fields around the village like a clover leaf, west, south, east, and from up here, only from up here, you can see what you've never seen though you've walked it 10,000 times. The pattern, the strips, hundreds and hundreds of parallel lines of ridge and furrow raked across the countryside in every direction, silvered with snowmelt water standing in the furrows so the low sun catches them, and the entire visible earth turns to corduroy hammered out of a light. Your strips and Ralph's strips and the widow's strips and the Lord's great blocks of domain, the whole immense communal machine of it laid out plain. A machine you see now, seen whole for the first time at 16 from a stone tower. A machine made of dirt and custom and 8-ox plough teams and boon days and everyone knowing everything about everyone. A machine for turning weather into bread, with your village sitting in the middle of it like a hand in a glove. And beyond it the rest of the world, woods, blue-grey, the brook unravelled silver, the spire of the next parish, 4 miles, where your mother was born, smoke of the parish beyond that. On the eastern skyline, a smudge with a grey needle in it that Father Adam says is the market town and its church, 6 miles, and past it, he says, pointing along his arm so you can sight it. On the clearest days, that faint blue tooth on the very edge of seeing. The Abbey, 20 miles, the greatest roof in the Shire. You cannot really see it. You will claim forever that you saw it. Gilbert the Mason is up here too, coiling rope, and Father Adam has the wisdom to say nothing, and let the professional talk. And the professional talks the way Masons talk, which is downward, at the work. Feel that, he says, and puts your hand flat on the parapet, coping. 4 courses down, that's my master's work. 4 below that, his master's. Ground floor, Norman men, dead 200 year, and they're stones carrying mine. He says it the way you'd report the weather. I'll not see this tower done. It's done, but I mean done. Weathered in, gone grey all one colour, that's 50 year off. Man who cut the first course never saw the last. Never fretted about it neither. He looks at you, first time, quick, the measuring look. The same scales the steward used, but reading a different ledger. You're the lad holds his father's land. Aye, master. Then you know it already, and I'll say it anyway, since the priest hauled you up 80 foot to hear something. He knots the rope end, thump, done. All good work is begun by men who won't finish it, and finished by men who didn't begin it. Fields, towers, families, all one. The mortar doesn't care whose trowel, he shoulders the coil. Cut your course true and get down the ladder, that's the whole craft. He's gone down the stair before you can answer, which is fine because you couldn't have. You stay up another while until your hands stop feeling the parapet, watching the light move on the drowned corduroy of the fields, and I'll be honest with you, because it's night and you're half asleep and this channel keeps no secrets from you. You cry a little, 3 or 4 seconds, Wynne cried, about your father, who ploughed those lines down there for 30 years, and never once in his life stood where you're standing and saw what they looked like. That the pattern was there all along, above him, whole and beautiful, and he only ever saw it from inside, one furrow at a time. Then you wipe your face with the heel of your cracked hand, and you go down the turning dark of the stair, back into the one furrow you can see at a time, which is called your life, and which looks different now, and will keep looking different, quietly, from here on. That's what towers are for. The bells are almost incidental. Lent begins, and Lent, in your village, means one thing is now truly coming, visible on the calendar the way the Abbey was visible on the skyline, faint, certain, enormous. Easter, and before Easter, the wash. Lent, for your listeners, is a word about giving up chocolate. For you it is 40 days of the larder's leanest arithmetic, arriving, and this is the cruelty and the genius of it, at exactly the moment of year when the larder was going to be lean anyway. No meat, no eggs, no animal fat by the church's rule. Not much of any of that left in the store by the calendar's rule. So the 2 rules shake hands over your empty bowl and call it holiness. Pottage goes grey. The flitch, what's left of it, hangs untouchable in the smoke, and your brother sits under it at supper some evenings just to suffer publicly, which he has a gift for. Salt herring appears, everyone's Lenten herring carted inland in barrels, silver, stiff, punishingly salty. And by the 3rd week of it there are men in this village who will tell you, quietly, in the ditch, out of the priest's hearing, that hell is not fire, hell is herring. But something else is happening in these same weeks, underneath the hunger, and every body in the village feels it before any mind says it. The light is coming back. Prime rings and the sky's already pale. The frozen street goes to mud, which is worse to walk on and better to see, because mud is the ground alive again. The first lambs come. You're up 2 whole nights in the sheepfold that fortnight, Your hands learning things about birth that your listeners' hands will never learn. Blood-warm and slick and shockingly strong. A ewe's whole body heaving against your braced knee, and a wet lamb steaming in the cold air at the end of it. Furious to be alive, and you carrying it inside your own tunic, against your own shirt, next to your own skin, down to the house to warm, because that is what the inside of a peasant's clothes is also for. It is the ambulance. Your sister names the lamb. You tell her not to name the lamb. She names the lamb. The birds change. Even you, who have never once in your life thought the word nature, because you do not have it and do not need it. Nature is not a thing you visit. It is the water you are a fish in. Even you register the morning the blackbird starts up on the byre roof ridge like a paid musician. Coltsfoot in the ditch you cut. Small suns on bare stems, first flower of the year, and old Maud gathers it for coughs. The alder catkins go loose over the brook. The days stretch, and with the light, with the mud, with the lambs and the birds, comes rising through the whole village a very specific, very physical restlessness that your world has a precise name for and observes as seriously as any feast, and the name is this: winter is coming off. Understand the state of things by late March. Every human being in this parish has been living inside the same wool since October. The straw in every bed sack has been slept on for 150 nights. The rushes on every floor have absorbed a whole winter of what floors absorb. Every hood is stiff at the neck edge. Every child's hair has reached its maximum entanglement, a felted civilization behind each ear. The lice have compounded like a money-lender's interest. Nobody smells anything, because everybody smells everything, so it cancels to zero. But it isn't zero, and the proof is that when the March wind blows clean off the ploughlands through the open shutters, the whole household turns toward it like plants. And the church, which grew up in this same mud and knows its people to the bone, has set at the exact end of this long, dirty tunnel the greatest feast of the year, and has attached to that feast an expectation, old as anything in your world. You come to Easter clean shriven in the soul, Lent's whole work, everyone to confession, everyone to be houseled at the Easter Mass, the one communion of the year for most folk, and clean, honestly clean, in the body that carries the soul in, new washed head to heel, best shirt, the winter combed out, cracked out, boiled out, burned out, scrubbed off, and left behind you like a shed skin. Twice a year, the title said. Here is the first of the twices, and it is not a bath the way your listeners mean a bath, a private 10 minutes behind a locked door. It is a rite. It takes the better part of a week. It involves the entire village. It burns a season's saved fuel, and everyone from the Reeve to Old Maud is in it together, because you cannot half clean a village any more than you can half drain a field. Lice do not respect crofts. Either everyone boils their shirts in the same fortnight, or nobody has truly boiled anything. So in the week before Palm Sunday, the village begins the wash, and I'm going to walk you through all of it, slowly, because there may be no single scene in your whole year that tells your listeners more truly what kind of people you are, how poor, how careful, how unbelievably competent, and how very far from ashamed. It begins, like everything, with fuel and water. The wood has been set aside for weeks. This is planned like a campaign. The washfire wood stacked separate and defended from the daily fire's appetite, because you cannot heat a village's worth of water on scraps. The great household cauldrons come out, and the village owns among itself perhaps a dozen real cauldrons and 2 proper wooden bucking tubs. And these circulate in an order that was old when your grandmother was young, and that nobody would dare rearrange. The order is memory, the order is precedence, the order is peace. Down at the brook, below the village, below, always below by court order, on pain of fines, the place where drinking water is drawn. The bank has a trodden shelf and flat stones set generations ago, the washing place, and from Monday of that week it does not go quiet in daylight hours, and the whole time running through the village like a second brook is lye. You should know lye, because lye is the entire chemical industry of your world, and it is made at home by women out of the two things a peasant house has infinite supplies of: wood ash and water. Rainwater dripped slow through a basket of white hearth ash, caught dark and slippery underneath. That liquor, harsh enough to sting the cracks in your hands white, is what lifts a winter's grease out of linen when the linen is bucked, laid in the tub in layers, drowned in hot lye, left to work, hauled out steaming, beaten on the bank stones with wooden bats. You can hear the wash-week from the far side of the west field, a flat wooden clock, clock, clock echoing off the church, rinsed in the running brook, wrung in pairs, two women twisting a sheet between them like a rope until it creaks, and then spread white on every hedge and every stretch of clean grass in the village, acres of it, so that for 3 or 4 days in Holy Week the whole parish looks, from the tower, some boys climb and swear to this, as if the snow came back, but warm and smelling of the sun. Soap exists, by the way. Your world makes it and has for centuries. Ash lye boiled with tallow, or in the south with olive oil. The fine white stuff of Castile is famous and costs accordingly. There's a ball of rough grey home-boiled soap in your mother's chest, hoarded like spice, and this is the week it comes out, because linens are only the beginning. At the end of the week come the bodies. It happens for your household on the Saturday before Palm Sunday, and it happens at home, in the one room, in front of the fire, in the borrowed half-tub that has been working its way down the street all week. The Reeves wife's tub, oak staves bound with withies, big enough for a grown man to sit in with his knees to his chin, and by the time it reaches the hearing house it has bathed, at your best guess, most of the top end of the village, and this bothers nobody, because the tub is scrubbed with lye between houses, and because squeamishness is a luxury good, and nobody here shops in that market. The whole day bends toward it. Water hauled from the well all morning. You do the hauling, trip after trip, the yoke across your shoulders with a bucket swinging at each end, 25 pounds a side, the yoke creaking, your neck learning it, until every vessel in the house stands full. The fire built up recklessly, gloriously, the washwood spent like a lord, the cauldron on and steaming refilled, on again. The door barred and the shutter pegged not against thieves, but against draught, because everyone still believes what everyone believes about wet bodies and moving air, and in a house like this they are not even wrong. The room goes warmer than it has been since August. The children go strange with the luxury of it, stripped to their shirts and giddy. Your mother runs it like the steward runs the manor. Youngest first while the water is cleanest. Your sister shrieking at every stage on principle, scrubbed pink. Her hair, this is the long campaign of the day, soaped with the grey ball worked to a thin reluctant lather, rinsed with jug after jug and then combed. The comb is boxwood, double-sided, coarse teeth and fine, your grandmother's. The fine side is for the knits, and your mother works it from the scalp out strand by strand, wiping the teeth on a linen rag, patient as ploughing, while your sister narrates her sufferings to the lamb who is present, because of course the lamb is present. What comes out on the comb goes in the fire. The fire crackles its small crackles. Nobody remarks on it. This is what the fine teeth are for. This is what the fire is for. Half of medieval hygiene is simply knowing what everything is for. Then your brother, fast and furious, in and out like a raid. Then you. And I want to slow down here, because you have not had your whole body in warm water since September, and your listeners have hot water on demand and have therefore never once in their lives felt what you are about to feel. You strip by the fire, everything, the whole house of clothes you've lived in, and the air on your bare back is strange, almost loud, and you fold yourself into the tub, knees up, and your mother pours from the cauldron dipper a slow stream across your shoulders. The heat goes through you like news. You actually hear yourself make a sound, an involuntary low sound, the sound your father used to make lowering himself onto the bench at night. And your skin has been a working surface for 6 months, an interface with wool and weather, cracked at the knuckles, chilblained, wind-scoured, itched, ignored. Your skin wakes up all at once, the whole organ of it, and reports for the first time since autumn that it is also for feeling things that are good. The warmth finds your lower back where the spade lives. It finds your feet, those two loyal abstractions, and turns them back into feet, an unrolling ache that is almost too much and then is exactly enough. The firelight is moving on the water. The water is going grey. You're 16 years old. You have buried a father and held a tenancy, and cut 30 feet of ditch through January clay. And for the length of this one tubful of water, you're none of those things. You are an animal in warmth, and your eyes sting, and you let them because everyone's due in the tub before Easter. It is one of the things the tub is quietly for. Then the work of it, because it is also work. The grey soap, harsh as a scolding, worked over every reachable inch. Your mother taking the rag to your back without asking, scrubbing between your shoulder blades in hard circles the way she has since you were the age your brother is now, and you let her, and neither of you says anything, and the rag on your winter back sounds like a spade in dry ground. Your hair soaped twice, rinsed with water that has gone from hot to warm, the last dipperful cool, a gasp, done. You stand, streaming, into the linen sheet held open by your mother with her face turned half away, modesty and efficiency in one gesture perfected by 10,000 mothers, and you are rubbed rough and dry in front of the fire, glowing, actually glowing. Your own skin unfamiliar under your own hands, smooth where you had forgotten smooth and lighter, feeling somehow lighter, as if the winter had a weight, and the weight is in the water. And then, this is the point, this is the whole architecture of the day, you do not put your old shirt back on. The clean linen has been airing by the fire since noon. The good shirt boiled and beaten and sun-dried on the hedge, and it goes over your head smelling of smoke and wind and lye, stiff and cool for 1 second and then warm, and the clean braise and the tunic itself brushed, beaten on the fence like a carpet, hung a day in the smoke as washed as wool gets, and you are, for one evening in late March, entirely new, clean skin in clean linen in front of a big fire with your hair drying in curls your family mocks you for lovingly. The old shirts are already in the bucking tub drowning in lye. The old bed straw goes to the buyer tomorrow and new straw comes in, and the flea's whole civilization falls in a day, without a battle, the way civilizations mostly do. Your mother bathes last. alone, the household turned to the wall or sent to the byre on invented errands, and the water she bathes in has washed her whole family first. And if you think she minds, you have not been listening to this story. That night the four of you sleep clean in clean linen on new straw, dressed, still dressed, always dressed, the clean shirt and hose now, because Easter changes many things, but it does not change March, and the bed smells of lye and smoke and dry grass, and it is, you would swear it, warmer. It isn't warmer. You are. Comfort is mostly contrast, and you own more contrast tonight than a king. A king cannot buy the feeling of the first clean shirt after 150 dirty nights, because to buy it he would have to pay 150 dirty nights, and he won't. And so there are things in your bed tonight that are not in his, and you know it. And it is one of perhaps 4 advantages your station has over his, so you savour it deliberately, on purpose, like the last of the honey. Palm Sunday. The whole parish in procession around the churchyard behind the cross, with willow and yew in their fists because palms do not grow in England, and nobody sees why that should stop the feast. Holy Week, dark and strange, the church stripped bare, and then Easter morning, and the whole village, washed, combed, shriven in its best, packed into the nave in one bright noise, and even you can smell it. The once-a-year smell of everyone clean at the same time, lye and smoke and new grass, 40 households worth, rising in the candlelight with the incense toward the painted roof, the smell of the year starting over. Christ is risen. The larder reopens. There is bacon in the pottage by Monday, and you would think, you, listener, in your nightly washed body, that this is where the story of the title ends. Mystery solved, bath achieved, roll credits into spring. But I told you back in the deep of January to hold a thought. The thought was 30 seconds. The thought was what sleeping in your clothes is really for, on the one night in 1,000 when it is for anything at all. That night comes in April. It is a dry April, which is good for the ploughing and bad in a way nobody says out loud, because saying it out loud feels like calling it, and a village of thatch in a dry month is a held breath. The night it happens there is wind. You will remember the wind afterward more than anything, because the wind was there before the fire, and the wind is what turned an accident into an enemy. A hard, dry easterly that had been combing the thatch all evening, moaning in the roof hole, making the covered embers of every hearth in the street pull and brighten under their ash like something breathing through a blanket. You are in the middle of the first sleep when the world ends. It ends as a voice. One voice, far up the street torn by wind, and there is a word your world keeps for this and only this. A word never used lightly, never in jest. A word that bypasses the ears and goes straight to the legs of every sleeper who hears it. Fire! And here it is. Here is the 30 seconds. You are out of the bed before you are awake. Truly in that order. You come to consciousness already standing, heart slamming, because your body heard the word before your mind did, and your body knows the drill it has never once rehearsed. And you are dressed. You're shod in one heartbeat, feet into cold leather, hood on. That is the entire toilet of the emergency. One heartbeat, because everything else has been on your body since dark. Your mother is up the same instant. The children haul to their feet, stumbling, and there is no gathering of garments in the dark, no hunting for a hose with the roof may be coming, no child standing barefoot in its shirt in the killing wind while a house burns. The children are dressed. They sleep dressed. Everyone always sleeps dressed, and in the 60 seconds it takes your household to be out the door and into the street, ready for weather and work, you understand the title of this story completely. Finally, in your legs and not your head. This is why. All winter it was warmth, tonight it is time. Your clothes just bought your family the one thing that cannot be bought back, and they bought it while you were unconscious. The street is filling, doors banging all down the row, figures spilling out, dressed all of them, every household in the village hitting the street inside a minute, an entire community deployed from dead sleep to full muster faster than a garrison. And nobody in your world will ever once remark on this, because it is simply how people sleep. And at the top of the street, 3 crofts down from the church, the Aldith house has a crown of fire. The thatch is alight along the ridge, and the wind has it. Flames lying down flat in the gusts and standing up man-high in the lulls, and burning straw. This is the horror, you see it at once. Everyone sees it at once. Burning straw lifting off the ridge in rags, airborne, streaming downwind over the neighbouring roofs like the fire is sowing itself. Someone is ringing the church bell, wild. Nothing like prime, the bell just seized and swung, and the sound turns the night to iron. Nobody has to be told anything. This is the thing. This is what your listeners must understand about what happens next. There is no fire brigade coming. There is no such thing anywhere in your world. The village is the brigade. It has always been the brigade, and every soul in it, down to your 7-year-old sister, knows their place in a machine they have never assembled, because the machine is assembled out of the same stuff as the ploughing and the wash week and the boon days, out of everyone knowing everyone, and everyone knowing how everything is done. The Aldiths are out. That's the first shout answered. All out. The old man's widow daughter and the children counted twice in the road, coughing, and the pig loosed screaming down the street to be someone's problem at dawn. Then the machine runs. 2 chains form to the well, and a third of children and old women to the brook, buckets and pans and milk pails and the church's own leather buckets that hang in the tower for exactly this night, and you are in the well chain, 4th man, and the work is this. A full bucket arrives in your left hand with its 25 pounds trying to keep going, and you swing it through, hip and shoulder, into the next man's grip, and an empty one is already coming back high, and again, and again, and the rhythm takes over, the whole chain locking into one creature with one pulse, water slopping ice-cold down your side, your palms, your new-healed Easter-clean palms, going raw against the bales, and you do not feel it. You will feel it enormously tomorrow. But the water is not really for the burning house. Every grown person here knows the brutal triage by heart, knows it from stories told by grandmothers, from the great fire at the market town in living memory. A thatch roof going in this wind is gone. You cannot pour a well up onto a burning sky. The water is for the neighbours. The chains split and the buckets go up. Up ladders, up onto the roofs downwind where men are straddling the ridges, and you see John the Reeve up there, of all men, tallies forgotten, hood gone, beating out spot fires with a soaked sack, and men hauling up bucket after bucket to drench the thatch ahead of the flying straw, wetting the whole downwind street roof by roof, making the village too damp to catch. And on the burning house itself the other tool comes out, the one your listeners will not expect, the hooks. Great iron fire hooks on poles the length of 2 men, kept, like the buckets, against this night, and men set them into the burning thatch and pull the roof off the house, on purpose. Tear it down, Drag the blazing straw off the rafters in avalanches of sparks into the croft where it can be beaten and drowned in the mud. Sacrifice the roof to save the walls. Sacrifice the house to save the street. It is the most violent act of neighbourliness you will ever witness. Half the village demolishing a widow's home at 2 a.m, at full sprint, to keep the fire on the ground where water and mud and boots can kill it, while the widow herself stands in the road with her grandchildren inside her cloak and watches, and does not weep yet, because weeping is for afterward, and she is of this village and knows the order of operations. It takes until the sky greys. It is the longest and shortest night of your year. Somewhere in it, your brother in the brook chain, 12 years old, passing pails for 4 hours without one word of complaint, growing up in a single night the way boys here do, all at once, by firelight. Your mother with the other mothers, a second quieter machine, blankets and ale and the oldest children folded into other households before the roof was even fully down. Father Adam in his cassock with soot to the eyes, working a hook alongside the smith. A moment, you will keep this moment, when the wind lulled at last near dawn, and the whole street stood black and steaming and silent. 40 households leaning on buckets and hooks in the smoking dark, and somebody, you never learned who, started laughing. The unkillable idiot laughter of people who have just not died, and it went down the chain like the buckets did. And even the widow smiled, and the ruined pig came trotting back up the street, as if to ask what everyone was looking at. The tally in daylight. 1 house gone to the walls standing, mud walls barely burn. It will be re-raftered and re-thatched by Whitson. The whole village turning out for it in shifts. Boon days nobody owes and everybody pays. 2 roofs downwind, scorched and drowned, and their households already up ladders pulling wet straw. 1 old widow alive, 4 children alive, everyone alive, every single soul, and by noon the story has already set into its final village shape. The shape it will hold for 50 years. The night the Aldith house burned and no one was lost. And in the church court of your own head, where you've been arguing this story's question all winter, the pause, the firewood, the frozen crock, the whole careful ledger of why your people live and sleep the way they do, the verdict comes in quietly while you stand in the wrecked croft the next morning, aching in every rope of your back, raw-handed, reeking of smoke, alive. They were right. Not right about everything. The poors are innocent and your listeners' physicians will spend centuries sorting it out. But right where it counted, right in the way that poor, careful people are right, which is by paying for every belief with their own skin, and keeping only the ones that pay back. Sleep dressed. Cover the fire. Keep the buckets in the tower. Know your neighbours better than you know yourself. The whole tangled mud and straw system of the village, the thing that itched and stank and watched you and never once left you alone. Last night it stood up out of bed, dressed and shod in 30 seconds, and it saved every life it contained. You could not have known in January that the answer to why peasants slept in their clothes would arrive at 2 o'clock on an April morning wearing a crown of fire. But you know now, and you will sleep dressed for the rest of your life, and so will your children. And when your grandchildren's grandchildren finally build their houses out of brick, with chimneys, and can afford at last to be undressed and unconscious at the same time, they will keep special clothes just for sleeping. Soft ghost clothes, the memory of clothes, because 10,000 nights like yours go that deep into a people, and some habits are just monuments that forgot what they commemorate. Your listeners are wearing one now, most of them. Tell them I said good evening. After the fire, the year picks up speed, the way years do once the light is winning. May, and the world goes green so fast it looks careless. The beans you dug into the muck-fed croft come up in ranks. The three great fields divide their labours the way they have since before memory. One in wheat and rye, one in barley and peas and oats, one lying fallow with the village beasts turned onto it, dunging it back to strength. And the whole parish turns to the endless, stooping, unglamorous war of the growing season. Weeding, weeks of it. Thistles speared out from between the wheat with a forked stick and a hooked one, docks pulled, charlock pulled, your back learning a new ache to layer over the winters. Your hands, listen to your hands across this year, they are the true narrators, trading the winter's cracks for the summer's calluses, the skin of your palms going amber and hard as horn, so that by June you can pull a thistle bare-handed that would have put a town clerk in bed. And the warmth changes the whole economy of the body. This is the other half of the title, the summer half, and it is gentler than the winter half. Now the shirt comes off for work in the noon heat, and the sun gets at your hide for the first time since September, and men work in a hayrow strip to their braes and nobody blinks. Now the brook is not an enemy. Boys are in it every warm evening below the ford, shouting, dunking each other, half washing, half playing, and you go too some evenings, wading into your waist in the brown, cool water with the day's dust lifting off you in a visible bloom. And this, casual, unceremonial, June-warm water on a working body, is the informal third and fourth and fifth bath the title never counts. The twice a year of the saying is the full rite, the tub, the lye, the boiled linen, the changed straw. Between the rites, in the warm half of the year, there is the brook, and there are hands and face daily always, and there is the sweat itself, which your world holds, not stupidly, to carry off some of what water would. Winter is when the washing stops. Summer merely never makes a ceremony of it. Haymaking at midsummer, the whole village in the meadow by the brook in a line of swinging scythes. The smell of cut grass so enormous and so sweet it is almost a taste. The hay turned and cocked and carried, everyone working to the weather like sailors, because hay rained on is hay half lost, and hay is the winter's cow, and the winter's cow is the winter's milk, and so a cloud on the wrong afternoon in July can reach forward 6 months, and thin a child in January. You understand by now, you have understood since the ditch, that everything in this world reaches forward, that every hour of every season has its hand on some far-off month's shoulder. Then August, and the harvest, which is not an event but a country at war. Everything stops for it. The manor court does not sit. Disputes are frozen. Every hand that can close around a stalk is in the fields from first light to last. Men reaping the wheat high on the stalk with sickles, women and children binding and stooking behind them, the Lord's domain claiming its boon days at the exact moment your own strips are crying out so that the village works double, its own bread and the Lord's, and the light lasts until 9 and people use all of it, and then some moon-binding sheaves ghost pale in the dusk. You eat in the field. You sleep like something felled. The dust of the reaping gets into everything, chaff down the neck, thistle spines in the forearms, the itch of harvest, which is its own institution, and by the second week every soul in the parish is the same colour, a flowered golden brown, and moves the same way, in the careful spare motion of bodies that are spending down to the bottom of the granary, Father Adam warned you about, and you hold. That is the private victory of your 17th summer, the one the village is watching for, whether you know it or not, and you know it. The hearing strips come in, not the best in the field. Ralph at Brooks are the best in the field, and the world would tilt on its axis were it otherwise, but full, clean, well stooked, carted and stacked in good time, tithes set aside for the church without being asked twice, the Lord's works rendered to the day, and at the harvest home feast, the Lord's board groaning once a year for the whole village, goose and ale and the reaping songs your father used to carry the low line of Master Simon the steward, passing down the yard, stops by where you sit. Hearing, you stand. Master Simon. He looks at you a moment with the ledger face, and whatever sum he's been running since January, you watch it total. Your furrow's straight, he says, and moves on. 4 words this time. At this rate of growth, he will manage a full sentence by the time you're 30. You sit back down, and Ralph at Brook, of all men, refills your cup without a word, which in the language of this village is a knighthood. Michaelmas, at September's end, closes the ring of the year. Rents reckoned, the roll amended, a new reeve chosen. John again, poor devil, re-elected the way a millstone is re-elected by the grain. The pig killed and salted, the flitch renewed in the smoke, the geese driven to the market town. You go along your 5th journey there ever, and stand in the din of it, a town of maybe 800 souls that feels to you like Nineveh, and see a man selling glass beads and a woman with a monkey, an actual monkey, and decline to believe in it for 3 days afterward. And in the first spell of fine October weather, before the cold shuts down the whole operation for another half a year, the village does it all again. The second wash. The autumn rite, smaller than Easter's but the same shape, the linens bucked and beaten and hedged, the tub making its patient way down the street, the household fire spent like a lord for one day, the comb, the lie, the held sheet, the good shirt, because you're all about to be sewn into winter, so to speak, sealed into the wool for the dark half of the year, and your world is careful to cross that threshold clean, the way a ship is careened before a long voyage. Twice a year, spring and autumn, Easter and Michaelmas tide, the 2 great cleansings, set like gateposts on either side of the survivable half of the year. That October evening, scrubbed and glowing in front of the extravagant fire with your hair in its mocked curls, your sister, 8 now and a philosopher, asks from inside her hood why people can't just be clean all the time, and your mother, wringing the rag over the grey water, gives the whole of this story in 1 sentence without looking up, in the tone of a woman stating the price of eggs. Clean is for them as can afford the fire. Then she has your brother by the ear because he tried to skip the fine side of the comb, and the moment closes over its own wisdom like the brook over a dropped stone, and nobody in that room, yourself included, has any idea that anything memorable was said. But you'll remember it. You're remembering it now. And I skipped past something in the summer, in my hurry to get to the harvest, that deserves its own place in the record, because it is the one night of the year when your village and fire are friends in the open. St. John's Eve, midsummer, the 23rd of June, the year's hinge, when the light barely leaves at all, a green dusk at 10, a grey dawn at 3, and between them not true dark, but a long blue held breath. On that evening, by a custom older than the church on the rise, older maybe than anything else the village does, the young people build the bonfire on the green. It has been building for days, brush and thorn from the hedge trimmings, dead wood, old rotten hurdles, everything burnable that has no better fate stacked man high, and at dusk it is lit, and the whole parish comes out to it, and the one element you have spent all year rationing, covering, fearing, hauling ladders against, fire, is for one night let off its chain, and it turns out that off its chain among friends it is beautiful. You will remember the smell of it all your life. Wood smoke, but sweeter than hearth smoke, greener mixed with the smell of the trodden grass and the herbs, for there are herbs in it, St. John's wort and fennel thrown on by the older women against everything the older women throw herbs against, and mixed too with the smell of the whole village in its summer skin, brook-washed and sunburned, nobody sealed into winter wool, sleeves rolled, hoods down, faces orange in the light. There is ale. There is a man with a bagpipe whose talent is enthusiasm. There is dancing on the green, the long chain dances everyone knows from before they knew anything, and you are pulled into one by hands on either side, and one of the hands, for two full figures of the dance, warm and calloused and entirely matter-of-fact, is Alice's, and neither of you looks at the other, and both of you know, and the fire roars, and the bagpipe commits its crimes, and overhead the sky refuses all night to go fully dark, as if the year itself was sitting up late. And then the part your listeners will not expect. When the fire burns down to a long bed of embers, raked out into a glowing lane, the young men jump it. One after another running starts across the green, sailing through their own risen sparks. For luck, for the crops, for the girls watching, for the oldest reasons there are, and the village counts and cheers and grades each jump like the manor court in session. And you jump it too, 17 years old, harvest hard, 3 running strides, and then the heat under you like an open oven door, and the sparks going up around you like the reverse of snow, and you land clean on the far side in the trampled grass, alive to the exact edges of your skin, and the cheer hits you, and somewhere in it you can pick out, reading by ear, the village art, your brother's whoop, and Ralph Atbrook's short bark of approval, and one particular laugh from over by the well that you would know in a crowd of 10,000. Old men swear the smoke of the midsummer fire drives the evil of the year from the fields it drifts across. Father Adam, standing at the edge of the firelight with a cup, holding the church's ancient, carefully negotiated truce with this whole business, says only that God made midsummer as well as Easter, and drinks. And whether or not the smoke does anything for the wheat, watch what the night does for the people. A village that spends 51 weeks a year being careful with fuel, careful with food, careful with water, with words, with strength, with everything, gets one short night of magnificent recklessness, fire wasted by the cartload on nothing but joy, and takes it, and is renewed by it in some ledger no steward keeps, and walks home along the pale street at 2 a.m. through the not quite dark ash in its hair, singing. You sleep the last 3 hours of that night on top of the blankets, fully dressed as ever, smelling of smoke and trodden grass, with your ears still ringing, and it is the finest sleep of the entire year, and in the morning the green wears a black scar that will show until October, and the village walks past it all summer the way you'd walk past a medal. And so the year comes round and delivers you back where this story found you. November, the light failing by mid-afternoon, the street freezing back into its mountain range, the household drawing in around the fire like fingers closing. But you are not where the story found you. That is the quiet trick of years and of stories about them. The house is the same one room. The pot is the same pot. But the harvest is in the stack and the strips are ploughed for winter wheat. You at the plough handles yourself now, a hired ox team and your brother, 13 and suddenly a hand's breadth taller, walking the head of the team with your father's goad and your father's low-level voice coming out of him so exactly that the first time you heard it your hands forgot the plough. The Aldith house has a new roof, gold as a loaf, raised in 3 great communal days of Whitsun labour, and it sits in the street like a proof of something. There is a second flitch in the smoke this winter, because the harvest was kind. Old Maud predicted the first snow to the day, and accepted the village's awe as her due. And your mother, on the night the rents were paid and the roll amended and the name Walter stood alone at last on the hearing line with no debts against it, sat across the fire from you and looked at you for a long moment, with the firelight moving on her face, and said nothing at all, and that nothing was the largest thing anyone said to you all year. On quiet evenings now, in the shut-in hour between supper and sleep, you sometimes sit on the bench with the harness across your knees, mending by ember light the awl and the waxed thread and the good smell of leather and tallow, your hands working on their own while your mind goes where it goes. Your sister asleep already, upright against your mother's side, entirely inside her hood. Your brother whittling something he claims is a boat. The cows, huge breathing on the other side of the hurdle, slow as tide. The wind trying the thatch and failing. You think, some evenings, about the people this year gave you. Gilbert the mason, gone on down the road to his cathedral, whose tower stands on the rise in the dark right now with the frost coming down on his last course of stone, beginning its 50 years of turning one colour. The old sailor you never met. Forgive me, wrong story. The old souls of this one. Father Adam, who buried your father and taught you the granary of a man's strength, trimming the sanctuary lamp about now, the one uncovered fire. The widow Aldith, under her new gold roof. Master Simon, riding his ledger-faced rounds of 4 manors through the November mud, and John the Reeve, notching tallies by rushlight, and Ralph at Brook, whose ditches are perfect, and whose cup-filling hand you understand now to be the truest sentence he knows how to say. All of them inside the same weather, all of them, this minute. In wool they will not take off tonight, in beds full of their own families, under covered fires, in the one long room of this world. You think about the year's ledger, since you are, whatever the village says, the kind of person who thinks. What it cost. Your father's name crossed out in Latin, a winter in the ditches, a night of fire, the granary of your strength drawn down, and Father Adam was right, it does not fill from below. Refilled slowly, meal by meal, sleep by sleep, all summer. What it paid, the harvest in the stack, the roof in the street, your brother's new voice, 4 words from a steward, the standing of your house. Whether the account balances is not a question your world asks. The account continues. That is all any account does. You cut your course true and you get down the ladder, and you think, tonight, with the harness mended and the awl put by and the fire due for covering, about the strangest thing of all, which is that some far-off night, further off than the abbey on the skyline, further than the sea you're prepared to believe in, someone might want to know how it was, how it actually was, not the king's, whose doings reach even this village as rumour a season stale, but this, the weight of the yoke, the sound of the fine-toothed comb, the smell of a household at midwinter, and the other smell, the Easter smell, of everyone clean at once. Why the clothes stayed on, what the 30 seconds bought, whether the people in the mud were fools, they were not fools. If you carry one thing out of this whole long year, carry that. They were running the oldest calculation there is. Heat against fuel, time against danger, the body against the winter, and they ran it correctly for 1,000 years with no instrument but their own skins, and they were wrong about pause and right about everything that had a price, and they would like your listeners to know. You feel oddly confident speaking for them, having been one all night, that they were not waiting in the dark for the future to invent the bathtub and rescue them. They were busy, the wheat was in the ground, the children were warm, the fire was covered, the account continued. You bank the embers and set the curfew dome over them, and the room goes from orange to grey to the soft-breathing dark. You find your edge of the bed by memory. Your sister has colonised 1/3 of it in her sleep, as is her custom and her right. You fit yourself in, dressed, of course dressed, warm wool at your neck, hood loose, shoes by the bed's foot pointed toward the door, because April taught you, and you do not need teaching twice. And the bed's heat comes up around you. 4 lives' worth, the oldest wealth there is. The wind again, in the thatch, the cow, the far fox. And now, because the day is done and the year is done and you have earned it several times over, let the story do the last thing it knows how to do and put you down for the night properly. Your eyes are heavy. They have been heavy since supper. All day the cold air and the long lightless afternoon have been making their old argument to your body, and your body has stopped disputing it. The bed has finished warming. Your feet, those 2 loyal veterans, have come back from wherever they go and are simply warm now, warm all through, resting against the brick your mother heated in the ashes and wrapped in sacking and slid down under the blankets without a word. The small nightly kindness she has performed for 20 years and will deny performing if asked. The itch at your shoulder speaks up once, out of habit, and even the itch is tired and lets it go. Your brother is asleep. You can tell by his breathing, which drops when he sleeps into a slow, deep rhythm, exactly like your father's, so that some nights, in the half-world before sleep, the room contains for a few moments everyone it ever contained. Your sister is asleep inside her hood, holding the toe of the lamb's wool mitten she will not be parted from. Your mother is not asleep. Your mother is doing what your mother does, lying still on the outside edge with her eyes closed, keeping the whole household somewhere just behind her eyes, counting her sheaves. She will sleep when the count comes out right. It always comes out right eventually. It came out right this year. You're warm enough, fed enough, safe enough. You have a roof that does not leak, a stack that will last, a fire sleeping under its dome, and people on every side of you whose breathing you could pick out of 1,000. That is more than most of the world has, in your century or any other. That is enough. Tomorrow there will be the bell, and the basin with its skin of ice, and the cow bawling her opinion of the schedule. Tomorrow there will be the buyer and the pot and the street and the strips, the whole slow machine taking up its work again where it set it down. But that's tomorrow. Right now there is only this, the dark and the warmth and the weight of the blankets and the wind up in the thatch saying the one long word it knows. The sounds of the village are going out one by one, like the fires under their domes. A last door, somewhere up the street. A dog, once. Then not even the dog. Let it come then. Let sleep take you the way the warmth took you, all at once and from every side. Let the field noise in your muscles fade. Let the day's ledger close itself. It balances. It kept you. Let it go. Let your thoughts slow and soften and lose their edges and finally stop. The first sleep is rising around you like the brook in spring, and you're not going to fight it, because nobody in the history of your village has ever won that fight or wanted to. Somewhere above the thatch, above the smoke, above the tower with its new stone going grey, the stars are out over the three great fields, over the corduroy of the strips lying silver under the frost, the pattern whole and beautiful in the dark with no one looking at it. The way it has been every night since the first ox pulled the first furrow, the way it will be long after. Centuries will pass. The village you know will change beyond recognition. The wool will give way to stuffs you have no names for. The one room will divide into many rooms, and one of them will be only for sleeping, and one of them, swear it on the rood, will be only for washing, with the brook itself piped hot into a white tub any evening anyone pleases, and the twice a year will become twice a day, and no one will remember why their soft night clothes exist, and the lice will be a word in a school book, and the fine-toothed comb will sit in a glass case in a town, labelled, and children will look at it and not know it was love. But people will still live where you live. They will still work through their seasons and count their stores and worry their own quiet arithmetic in the dark. They will still climb into warm beds at the end of cold days with the wind doing its one long word above them, and feel the heat come up around them and think, enough. This is enough. Some things don't change. The tired body doesn't change. The covered fire in all its forms doesn't change. The need, at the end of the day's account, to lie down among the people you keep and be kept by them, that doesn't change either. So let it be the winter of 1358 a little longer, just until you're under. Let the ember tick once beneath the dome. Let your mother's count come out right. Let the wool hold what it holds. You've earned this rest. All of you have, in every century. Take it, and dream of whatever dreams may come. Good night.